Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Art of Advisor Coaching, deepening your BG5 knowledge and impact. So, what are we doing today? We're going to be learning about advisors from a coaching perspective. So, the theme is changing the world of business, but doing it through obviously BG5. And if we're going to change the world of business, I think advisors are such a great place to start. Let me just pause for 1 second. Excuse me for a minute. So if you are an advisor, you have one of these particular 22 channels, and you represent 23% of the population. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 sec. There's also another type, as we know, that the builders on the right, they represent 67% of the population. So that's 90%. So builders, as you know, have this energy function defined. And it's really simply, you can tell that they have one of these 11 strengths defined. So 90% of the population. So builders are just doing their thing. They're building, growing, working. They're just using that energy up. The reason that there's such a dynamic relationship between advisors and builders is because a lot of builders don't obviously understand their type. And so that's where the role of advisors come in. Really important. And when you look, you see on the left, the chart, that all of the strengths sort of operate around that energy function. So every single advisor has this function open. And so they get a firsthand experience of understanding, is this person 7 out of the, if we have a population statistic of 10 people, 7 of those people are builders. So all the other types, the evaluators, the initiators, and the advisors, they have this innate firsthand experience of understanding something really simple but really core. Is this person using their energy in a really effective way? So builders have this sort of signature dynamic. Either they're doing something they love and they really enjoy it, and you can feel this energy sort of moving up, or they're in a frustrated place and their energy is devolving. So advisors, initiators, and evaluators, they have this innate experience through their own body of how are builders operating. And I would guess, especially in today's day and times, that a lot of builders are overworked, they're frustrated, they're being put in an impossible situation. So that's where an advisor comes in. So that's why we're going to have a focus on coaching today, is being able to coach based on your unique skill sets. So just a little statistic. So there's 4 major types. Initiators represent, give or take, 9%. They're the ones who initiate and make things happen. The builders have the ability to work hard. They build, they work, and they work. Now, work is defined for a builder as anything they love doing. Advisors are the ones who have the ability to guide and advise others, and especially the builders. And so the evaluator is more the one who is either in the middle of the group or just on the outside, evaluating, facilitating, organizing. Really important role. So what sets advisors apart is their ability to understand how others work on a deep level. And a lot of times that's through their openness. So you're the only type that has the ability to read others, and through this guide, this ability to guide, can lead others if they're asked to, if they're invited to. Now, to something to understand right away from about advisors is they're designed to work as a specialist. Whenever I give sessions to advisors, I like to say, don't ever charge for the hours worked. So you're not talking about, all right, so I worked 8 hours and I make X amount of dollars per hour. An advisor is always meant to charge based on the value they provide. So it's a little intro to our webinar for the day. A little bit about me, your host, along with Vanessa, my co-host. I started learning human design in 2005, so it's just coming up on 20 years almost. So I started out in the IHDS as studying to get my analyst certification, which I did, an LYD guide. And then somewhere along the line, I get this wonderful opportunity. So this is back when BG5 was hosted within the IHDS to teach there. So I was one of the first BG5 teachers before it sort of broke off into its own school. So I have two sort of stints working with BG5, one back in the IHDS, I took a break, and then I recently rejoined the Institute. My teaching style is sort of very practical, I would say. And then you could ask Vanessa how she perceives it. My teaching style is all about, we have the theory, and then here's how to apply it. So I have this real duality that I want to make everything that we learn very practical. So the application, I run through this lens of coaching. How can you apply this particular theory into your work with a client? So right from the beginning, even in my foundation classes, we start from that lens. And then when we go into the certification class, we go a little bit deeper, more nuance. And then there's you. So you as a student, you as a potential client, what have you, I see your journey in a very particular way as a student. So there's three aspects. So you're here to learn all the key aspects of career design. So I tallied it up, give or take. So in the first two foundation classes, Foundation 1, Foundation 2, there are about 100, again, give or take, bits of information that you have to learn in a very short period of time. Not only are you learning these discrete bits of information, you have to learn also how they fit together. That's called keynoting, as you know. So we don't spend a lot of time keynoting all the different aspects. We sort of learn each tidbit along the way. The certification class is tying that all together, but still, it's a lot. So the first aspect of your learning journey is just the rote memorization, the learning. This is what the 4 types are. This is all the decision making. This is the personal interaction style. You're going to learn a lot during that time. Now, here's the second part, which is if you're just learning human design for the first time, human design / BG5, what you're going to come across pretty quickly is you realize that human design is a mutative system. And what that means is when you're learning it, it changes who you are. It changes how you look at life. It changes your perception of business, yourself, people, relationships. And it does that in a sort of really sometimes gentle way. And then sometimes it just kind of blows your mind. So I tell the story often to my students. When I was studying to be an analyst, it took me an actual good amount of time. It took me 6 years from start to finish to get my analyst certification. There was a point in time, sort of midway through, when I realized I needed a break. I couldn't actually pick up human design for a little while. So I took a year off. And during that time, I didn't look at any human design material. And at the end of the year, I felt this urge, okay, let's go back. So the reason I tell you this story is because I don't think that students coming into BG5 fully expect or are aware that they're going to be changed on a fundamental level. Now, BG5 is a very accelerated learning path. So in hearing this, I want you to give yourself time to understand, wow. So if you reach this place of overwhelm, that's understandable. So from my perspective as a teacher, part of my job is to help that process. I know it because I lived it, and I really respect people starting out for the first time. It's a big deal. So the third journey that you're going to go through is applying this knowledge firsthand because you're experiencing it. And then you start to go through this journey of actually coaching other clients, working with directly with them, either giving them sessions or having them hire you on as a coach. There's a little bit of a gap that exists. Once you finish your learning, you have all this knowledge, but if you haven't worked with a lot of clients yet, the big burning question that you have is, does this actually work? Does it make sense? Will my clients get it? Here's the thing. This is every new student who, or every new graduate will experience this, where they'll sit down for their first few clients and they'll start sharing their design with them. But there's a part of you that wonders, is this going to resonate? So here's a story for me. It was early on after I got my analyst certification. I was giving a reading, human design reading. We call them readings in human design, but it would be a session, a career design session in BG5. He was from Australia. So we met up on, I think it was pre-Zoom, some Zoom setup like that. And I started giving him his design. We had never met. I didn't know anything about him. Halfway through the session, he says to me, "How do you know this? How do you know so much about me from this chart?" That was my first real understanding that this works. And people who are hearing it for the first time, they will recognize themselves. It's an amazing sort of thing that happens, that when it happens to you for the first time, it's really, really cool. I just got to say that. So this is how I see your journey. And again, as a teacher, I honor that because I see it. Now, the other thing that with this three journeys in one, what you also need to understand is on the tail end of your studies, when you're getting ready to start working with clients, I want you to remember this time. Remember what it was like to learn BG5/human design for the first time, how you felt, how it took time to integrate, because your clients will go through the same process. So it's really important for you as someone new to it, just beginning, wherever you are in the foundations, or even if you're someone who's in the certification class and wanting to sort of look at, this through a different lens, you will be the greatest guide, the greatest example, the greatest role model for your clients. Because as you go through this process, it will be in your field. And so what that means is it's almost like a calling card. You've learned design, you've learned all these aspects of career design, you've sort of begin to integrate it into your body, mind fields. Other people, even online, can feel that. So as you come into resonance with your design, that will be something that is really alluring to your clients. They know what they're talking about. They've experienced this. This is not theoretical knowledge. Now, where advisors come into this is they have this ability to really zoom in on the other clients, or other people, I should say. So their energy field works really unique. So builders are this sort of open and enveloping field. They take in everything indiscriminately. Advisors are more focused on each person one at a time. So if you're working with an advisor client, they're going to experience you really directly. But if you're the advisor working with a client, you're going to take them in at a really deep level too. So I'm going to give a quick, sort of really fast foundation. We're not going to go into a lot of it, just some terminology that if you just haven't really learned about BG5, here's some quick terms so you can get what I'm talking about. So you've probably seen this body graph. This is not like the chakra system. The body graph is an upgrade. So instead of having the 7 chakras, we've upgraded to a 9-centered system. Each of these little shapes has a unique function. So starting at the top, this is the inspiration function. This is where your thinking happens. In human design, we talk about the head center. In BG5, we talk about it in terms of the function. So this is where your thoughts, your ideas, your inspiration comes from, both from within and also without. Right below it, that green triangle is conceptualization function. This is where our mental awareness happens. In design, this is called the ajna. So we have some thoughts, they come down into the ajna to make sense of them. And then afterwards, once we make sense of our thoughts, we want to communicate them. That's that brown box right below it. That's communication and action function. So we communicate in words and our actions, our behavior. So staying down the left here, the survival instinct. So there's 2 triangles pointing inward. The survival instinct is the intuitive function. The way it works is really simple in the sense that it's always, I think of this as a radar dish. You see those big ocean liners, they have these things on the top where this thing is just constantly scanning around. That's the way intuition works. It works non-verbally, and what it's basically doing is scanning your environment, and it has one question: is everything safe here? It's picking up, because it's about survival, it's scanning your environment for hazards, people who don't, look or feel good to you, new opportunities, whatever it is. That ability to intuit happens moment to moment to moment. So we're going to talk about some nuances of that. So in the red box in the center, this is the energy resource. This is vitality, life energy. So this is where the builder lives, totally out of this place. In design, we call it the sacral. And this works very particular in that it's always responding. Yes, I have the energy for this. No, I don't. So it's this simple dynamic. As life comes to you as a builder, you're either open to it or closed. Once you understand that dynamic, it's really powerful. Below that, the brown box at the very bottom of the body graph is the drive stamina. We call it the root. This is the adrenal energy. It pumps out adrenal energy. It's where our stress response lives too. Up to the right is the emotional intelligence. This is where all our emotions work. And above that is the willpower. This is ego. This is the big I. And it also can be very heart-based. So we think of the I and the ego. Sometimes we have negative connotations for that, but this, because it's associated with the heart, it can also have that heart-shaped, heart-focused dynamic. And finally, we have the identity direction. This is where, a sense of self can live. Again, we're moving through this really fast just to give people brand new a real general overview. So each function has a particular way it operates. So there's 3 places where awareness happens. So this is, if we look left to right, we have on the lower left, we have intuitive awareness, we have mental awareness, and we have emotional awareness. The second is these pressure centers. So we have 2 pressures pushing either up or down. So we have the inspiration that comes in, that wants to be expressed. And then we have this drive stamina, which is pushing energy up to either act or communicate. When we say pressure, it really is a pressure. So here's a quick example of how it. So one of the things I forgot to say is functions operate in one of 2 ways. One is either they're open or closed. So when a function is open, you can think of it as like a window in a house. And the window is always open 24/7. And so what that means in human terms is we have energy coming in all the time. So I have this root center open. and my partner has it defined. So defined means it's like a light bulb that's always on. And so it's pulsating that particular frequency of energy out into the world. So my partner has this adrenal energy that goes all the time, and me, I'm open to it. So I'm receiving this adrenal energy. So I'm a tall guy, and she's a little bit shorter than me. Even though she has this smaller stature, her energy is much stronger than mine at times. So that's an interpersonal dynamic to give you a sense of how these functions in a practical way. The third, the middle, is motors. We'll talk more about those in general. So these four functions generate a particular energy: willpower, emotions, life vitality, and adrenal energy. We have one identity function, that's the number 4, the yellow diamond in the middle, and communication is the 5th. Crash course. Why are they so important? Why are these functions? They are the fundamental building block of BG5. These functions are going to help us understand what your career type is, how you make decisions, what your strengths are, what you can rely on, what you broadcast, and conversely, how other people experience you. A metaphor is it's the music that you play. It's your contribution to the world. It's your way of helping others. It also really helps you understand how your body works, how your mind works, how your emotions work, how your instincts work. Now, there's one type, the evaluator, who has no functions defined. And when you're just beginning, you can see that as a weakness. It actually isn't. Their energy field works in a very unique way. They take in the world, but not as directly as you may think, the way I just described it before. You get to sample as an evaluator, very rare, by the way. So if there's 100 people in a gathering, only one of them will be an evaluator. So statistically, you can see they're very rare. That's what makes them so unique. They have the pulse on whatever, whoever they're working with or around. So we're going to start to get to know advisors. So I'm going to give you I'm going to model the way I teach in classes. So I'm going to give you basic theory, and then I'm going to show you how to apply it. But we're looking at that application is really clear. We're looking at it through the lens of coaching. So I'm going to look at all the different variations of advisors, but through a coaching lens. So even though it's going to look really simple on the slides, I hope you get a sense of how powerful you can be as a coach. Really simple. As I mentioned before, as an advisor, you have to have at least one. You will have one of these 22 strengths defined. You can have one or many. What you won't have is the energy resource defined, or a direct connection from say a motor to the throat. So you see those two X's? Those are the places where you won't have any definition in your design. But, excuse me, what you'll also discover in your studies is both builders and initiators can have their particular strength, that strength that makes them that whether it's a builder or an initiator, but they can also have one or more of these projected strengths as well. But you only have, so the important piece of that is you only have one type. So for instance, I'm what's called an express builder. I only have one strength. It's called the 3420, and that's my only strength. But Vanessa, on the other hand, she is an express builder too. She has that same strength, but she has a lot of additional strengths as well. So she's more unique in that she has more facets in her design than, say, I do. This is a reference slide. You can see this afterwards, just to sort of give you an overview. I'm not going to read this because we're going to go into more detail, but just check it out afterwards. I mentioned this idea of zones, but I want to look at it through the lens of coaching. Do we teach this in BG5? No, I made it up, but it's really fun, and it gives you a real overview of how this works. So we're starting from the top. We're just looking at the blue now. These concept of zones helps you understand that you can customize your coaching approach based on the kind of advisor your client is. So let's look at this based on their definitions of. So here we're looking at this actually from two perspectives. So we're looking at it through the lens of if your client is an advisor. You can also look at it through if you're an advisor, how would I coach? So an advisor, mental advisor, it's one of those six strengths up top in that blue zone. Your coaching is focused on their mental talents and how to express them. So this is coaching an advisor here. The second is we're talking about leadership coaching. Your coaching is focused on developing and honing their leadership capacity. The third one is performance coaching. So your coaching focuses on what they uniquely contribute to those they work with. And the fourth, which is essentially an emotional advisor, this is about relationship coaching. You're focusing on enhancing your clients' relationships through emotional intelligence. This is really cool, right? We can focus on how someone's mind works. We can focus on how they express their leadership and performance and relationships. Through your studies and even through this really short webinar, you're going to begin to get an understanding, wow, with this knowledge, I can give someone really specific information. One of the things I always tell my clients is that the session or again, human design terminology, the reading that I'm giving to them is totally unique to them. So every session that you do with a client will be totally unique. You'll say very specific things here and then totally different things here. So we're focused on just looking at advisors. Because advisors has so many variations, it's really important to understand, okay, what are the specific things that I want to work with to enhance their success in the world? So that's what this webinar is all about. So our first place we start is mental advisors. Just take a look at this just for 1 sec. We're looking at the left, just the body graph. So there's 3 functions and there's 6 potential strengths. A mental advisor has to have at least one of these defined. Remember, defined means it's something consistent within you. It can be either that top row, that's 6447, 6124, 634, or the bottom row. Their gift is the unique mental level of awareness. So what's important to know is below that communication function, there is no other definition, meaning there's no other strengths, there's no other functions defined. So here's the level of coaching, the 3 levels of coaching for this particular type of advisor. The first thing you want to do is help them understand how their mind works and how it expresses through words. The second is you want to help them understand how they make decisions through verbal processing. And the third is helping them understand their openness. So this openness, this concept of openness is where you're most sensitive to other people. And if I can use another word, where you're really vulnerable. So if you look at this picture on the left, you see there can only be 3 functions defined. That means automatically 6 places in their design will be open. So they're sensitive to energy, they're sensitive to emotions, they're sensitive to dangerous situations or places that feel unsafe. If you're someone who's more introverted, walking into a crowded restaurant that's really noisy, you're going to have this adverse reaction. You're going to feel, this isn't for me. This sensitivity can be a real gift. And if you don't understand it, it can be incredibly overwhelming. So you as a coach need to help your mental advisor understand that about themselves. A little bit of nuance. So there's 3 variations of how your mind works. It's either logical, through inner knowing, or through abstract. So let's keep these keynotes really simple. A logical mind processes step by step, sees things visually, but sees them sequentially. So if you come across a logical mental advisor, you now understand they process in a unique way. So when they tell you stories about, hey, how was your week? They're going to tell you, this happened Monday and this happened Tuesday. And on Wednesday I did this and Thursday. And oh, by the way, on Friday, this happened. That's how they think. That's how they sort of see that visually in sequential. On the right, we call it abstract. So both of these are what's called collective circuitry. So it's about sharing. So the logical person loves to share their thoughts in a very sort of didactic, organized way. The abstract person, on the other hand, shares stories. They don't see things linear. So it's like almost they start telling you a story. And so here's the beginning, they jump to the middle, they might move back, and then there's something over here. And then sometime at the end, the story makes sense. But between that, you're sort of hearing all this wonderful adventures that happened in between. And you as the listener may not make sense of it or be able to understand it until the story's finished. I can attest to this. I have friends who are very abstract in their way of expressing, and I realized that I just need to wait till they finish, and then suddenly it's like, oh, okay, I get what they're saying now. This is really specific, isn't it? The middle one is very different, very unique. It's all about individuality, and individuality it's about expressing your uniqueness, your personal self. People with individual circuitry in their design are here to bring change. So how a mental advisor with this kind of circuitry, these kind of strengths will show up is you may ask them questions and they'll say, I don't know. You ask them another question, I don't know. And suddenly 10 minutes later, they'll say, oh, I do. That knowing comes in a pulse. So this is how their awareness works. They don't know. And suddenly this pulse happens and awareness sort of dawns. So very unique. We just looked at 3 simple keynotes, but we now understand, wow, each of these mental advisors processes completely differently from one another. What gets really interesting is when you have a mix. I'm not going to get into that. That's too much. But you begin to understand that. So here's an example of a mental. Yes.
Mike, Oren has a question. Should we refer to connected strengths only when considering this diagram, or traits as well? And also, what about the strengths connecting conceptualization with communication and action?
Okay, ask the first question again, slowly.
Should we refer to connected strengths only when considering this diagram, or traits as well?
Good question. So for this webinar, for intensive purposes of this learning, we're just talking about 2 traits connected to one another. So a trait is just half a line. So it's in an open function, but it doesn't connect to the other function. So we're only looking at the whole strength, Oren.
Okay. And the question also said this is in regards to the types of coaching.
Yes. So you can look at it 2 ways. I'm looking at it through the lens right now of you're a coach. Doesn't matter if you're a builder, evaluator, or initiator. You're a coach, but you're working with advisor clients. So we're really focusing on understanding these 20% of the population. But you can extrapolate and turn it back around and understand, based on what Mike's telling me, I understand now how I coach. Any other questions?
Looks like that's
Great.
it for right now.
Okay. So 3 levels of coaching. So again, you're in the coaching role, you're working with a mental advisor. You're going to talk about how their minds work. So in this case, we see the conceptualization function connected to the communication function. You'll see this 43-23, it's all in red. So a strength has 3 variations. It can be red, black, or mixed. Red is unconscious. So we have now this person, how their mind works is they have that unique individual way of processing where they don't know, and suddenly they do. So this person has this ability to structure information in a really organized way. And the way they do that is when this knowing comes, they can share it. Ideally, they're invited to share because that's how advisors are most well received. When we see this red, what we can understand is we have this pressure. The thoughts are there, making sense of something. I want to tell someone. So with this particular design, they can sort of be the people who just blurt things out. Now, because this individual mind will have a really big impact because they change how people see things. There may be some resistance. So when we talk about decision making and understanding, we want to help them understand how they're designed, number one, to process their thoughts, but the decision making comes in, how they make decisions is they also process verbally. So people with this design are really need other people in their life that they can process with, not to get advice, but to get this understanding through talking through your thoughts. And as they speak, awareness happens. So the people are in their life. So certain advisors, it's really important that they have these people in their life, but they actually coach them to let them know, hey, I make decisions through processing. I don't necessarily need advice. I just need someone to be a sounding board, to hear me, to reflect back. The no advice rule is really important because it blocks up the processing. So the more they speak, the more they process, the more the awareness grows. Where the openness comes in is, again, we're looking at this mental advisor and we're seeing how open they are. So if you walk into, let's say, again, a party or a social gathering. So right down here, we have this open emotional function. So you're someone who's super sensitive to the emotions of other people around you. So if it's a real rowdy gathering, you're going to sort of feel that energy. And if you're in let's say you go to a funeral, I'm just using this as a metaphor, the energy will be more somber. You will feel that energy in your body. So you want to coach them to know that they're going to experience that. Self-identity. So a self-identity advisor has one of these 4 strengths defined in their design. They can have definition above, but nothing below. So their unique level of self-expression happens through the roles they play, through leadership. So each one of these strengths represents a particular style of leadership. They also make decisions through this verbal processing, but instead of expressing their thoughts, they're expressing something more deeper. It comes from this sense of identity. This is who I am. So they make decisions, they express themselves through that lens. And again, on a coaching level, we're talking about helping them understand their openness. Now, if you're a self-identity advisor and you're the coach, you're coaching them through, you're going to be the one who shows up in leadership roles, but your leadership is very unique, as we're going to see. So in this example, we see that there's a self-identity. We see the identity function connected directly to the communication function, but they also have another projected strength, which again is that 4323, which is about a structuring. It's about efficiency. It's about, this is the best way, the most efficient way to do things. But their leadership style is very experiential. Based on their experience, these are the lessons I learned. So if we're looking at a leader, so if you're coaching this person, if this is your coach E, what you're trying to draw out is learn about their experiences, and then you basically ask the question, what did you learn from that? What was the takeaway? What could you share with other people and be most helpful? Now, this particular leadership style is you have these experiences and it only makes sense at the very end of the experience. So let's say that you had a particular job working in a startup in a very particular role, and then you left and went to another company. So let's say that you're sort of in that place of, helping them, land at the next company. You want to help them identify what they learned. So we're looking at just one of these strengths, but we're really getting nuanced about how their leadership style presents itself. And part of that experience that they've gained, they're going to be able to share it in a really unique and dynamic way. So very similar on the decision-making style is about talking it out, having these, what we call sounding boards, very, very important. And again, understanding their openness. Now we're moving on to intuitive or instinctual advisors. Obviously, they must have the instinctual survival instincts function defined, but they can't have either the energy resource, that red box, or the emotional center defined all the way over to the right. Their gift is moment-to-moment intuitive awareness. If you're a coach, if you're an intuitive coach, your coaching is very spontaneous in the moment. You may have a plan as an intuitive advisor coach where you have a structure for a session, but you have to give it over to understanding that we may switch at any moment. So that's a unique kind of coaching style. Switching back, if we're coaching an intuitive advisor, we're now in the coaching role, and we're understanding how we can coach them best. The first and most important thing about people with intuitive decision-making capabilities is you want to bring them out of their mind into their body. They have to learn to trust their intuition. This is a very Zen-like existence. As soon as you sort of find yourself ruminating, you drop your attention back. So when I teach, I talk about this ability to develop a noticing practice. So noticing what's going on in your thoughts, noticing what's happening in your body. How does my body feel? What is my intuition telling me in this case? So there's always a part of our mind that has the ability to step out into what we call the observer role. So the reason I'm telling you this about this intuitive advisor is you want to be in that observer place to notice what's my intuition telling me. Intuition only speaks once. So you get this intuitive kind of hit or pop, and then it goes away. It's like the radar is on to the next thing. If you're totally lost in your thoughts, if you're totally lost in an experience, if you're totally lost on social media, you may miss that intuitive hit. So this is a very mindful way of coaching a client. it can be very difficult at first because intuition doesn't make sense to your mind. So you want to begin to gently over time help this client learn to trust their intuition by first understanding how it speaks. Again, we can look at this really specifically and understand, okay, this is an intuitive person that's very general, but we can look at their particular strengths and help them understand, no, my intuition works this way. This is how it speaks. This is how it shows up. This is how it operates. That's the deepening of their understanding of their intuitive strengths. I talked about intuitive awareness, intuitive advisors as performance coaching, because so much of this, even though it's not specifically, the survival instinct is not a motor, but so much around it is really about performance, what you're doing, what you're expressing in the world. So here, our particular coaching focus based on this design is you would be doing sales coaching with this client. In some way, some capacity, they are really uniquely suited to sales and or marketing. That's this, from the willpower function to the survival, you see the 26 to the 44. This is having this intuitive ability to know how to craft a message uniquely for the audience that you want to work with. What's an interesting nuance is we see this 51 coming out of the willpower to the identity function to 25. This is competitiveness. This is the sort of this ability to push the boundaries. So you might be, let's say that they actually are in sales, you're coaching them to be a top sales performer. You're coaching them to be the best marketer in an organization. You're coaching them to be the best at being a content marketer or content writer. Whatever sales, marketing, crafting messages they're doing, they want to become the best at it. So in that way, you become a performance coach for them uniquely. This is one unique design, but you're tailoring your coaching to this particular purpose, this particular focus. The awareness here is you're bringing your clients' awareness out of themselves and onto their clients, their audience, allowing that intuitive ability to how to craft a message. You want to help them craft it in a really unique way. And part of that is their ability to intuit who their audience is, what makes them unique, what's important to them, what's their pain points, what problem do they need solving. That's getting to know their clients or their audience in a very intuitive way. That's where this awareness practice comes in. So you want to bring them out of themselves. So again, we're talking on multi-dimensional. So there's you, the coach, which I'm talking from that perspective. There's your intuitive advisor client, and then there's their clients. So we're sort of moving across the spectrum here. There's a broad category called energy advisors. So really simply is they're an advisor, one of their 22 strengths falls within this sort of certain range. And the red, we have the willpower, we have the downrights, the blue is the emotions, or we have the drive stamina. On a general level, we want to be coaching them at 3 levels. One is to not compare themselves to builders. The builder with the energy resource function operates very differently than these other motors. These other 3 motors isn't designed for sustained output. Willpower is these short bursts of will. I have this energy to work for a very specific amount of time, and then I need to rest. The emotional motor generates emotions. It's an energy, it's there, It wants to express, but it doesn't operate in that builder way. Drive stamina is this adrenal energy. It's powerful. It's sort of, it's a catalyst to, okay, we got to get this project done by a certain time. It's like you push it out, and then there's this rest time. Whereas the builder has the potential to work and work and work, provided they're doing something that they're enjoying. That's again where the advisor comes in to understand, is this builder doing what they really enjoy doing? So we have an emotional advisor. So you have one of these four strengths. So as an emotional advisor, you can have any other function defined except the energy resource, the builder function. Emotional advisors will automatically be connected to one of the other two motors. There's lots of energy, but they're designed to wait out the emotional wave to reach clarity before jumping into action. A lot of energy moving through the body. They have this thing that they want to do, and then suddenly, because they have this emotional decision-making process, we're telling them to wait, slow down, take your time. The reason for that is because emotions rise and they fall, and they rise and they fall. This is the key element of coaching emotional advisors, getting them to slow down. It's not easy. The first invitation that comes along, they want to jump on and just go. No, just wait. So one of the things you do with emotional advisors, you develop these key phrases. So anytime they get an invitation, an opportunity that shows up, one of the key phrases, let me sleep on it. Let me talk it over with my significant other. Let me think about it. All of these things that slows down the process, because once an invitation shows up in an advisor's life, they start to go through the emotional wave process. And sometimes it can take a couple minutes, sometimes it can take a couple hours, sometimes it can take a couple days. And no joke, no lie, I once heard someone with emotional decision-making authority say, it once took me 6 years to make a decision. Big decision, it was whether to move or not, but still, that clarity didn't show up from the moment the opportunity was there till finally saying, okay, I'm ready to move. Not all decisions take 6 years, but so what's really interesting about, again, BG5 is we not only understand that this person has this consistent emotional wave in their life, but it also works very specifically. 3 different waves. We have a tribal wave, individual wave, and an abstract wave. So we have sensitivity, we have very touch-oriented, that's the tribal wave with those 2 strengths. This is about giving and getting support. So what an advisor knows a good invitation is somewhere where there's mutual respect, mutual admiration, mutual support. Individuals, the individual way, which in this case is just 1 strength of 3955, moodiness, melancholy, passion. It moves along gently, and then suddenly there's a spike up or down. The abstract wave, which is in this case just the 4130 down below, desire and feelings, expectations. You have these peaks and these valleys, and it's based on expectations and fantasy. I won't get into this too much. This is very specific, but just to give you a sense of when your client realizes that not only they get to understand how their emotions work, but this very specifically, it'll seem like you have a superpower. Here's a chart of the former president of the United States, President Barack Obama. He was an emotional advisor. He had this 1 strength defined, the 4130, the fates. So he was someone who really was based on his desires, his hopes. So he came in to the presidency based on this concept of hope. Like, we had all this going on before, here's my vision for something else. I'm bringing this level of vision, this expectation that says, hey, let's do it a little bit differently. Whether he succeeded or not, that's for history. But imagine that you're his coach. You're kind of sitting in the White House in the, Washington, D.C. in the United States, and you're teaching him about how this works. So the first place you would start is, again, what we just talked about, is we call this EQ, emotional quotient, or emotional intelligence. But in our case, it's very specific about how his emotions work. And we go on to give him practical tips and strategies for decision making. I was trying to imagine, working with the president of the United States. He's in all these meetings with these advisors and sometimes the generals. And what were some ways that we could slow the process down so he had time to make decisions is he sits back. He allows the discussion to take place. He's pondering. He's sort of feeling into it. He's taking in different perspectives. Meanwhile, he's not forcing himself to make a decision. He says, okay, based on what I've all heard here, I need to go and think about it. He gives himself time to make those decisions. The other thing to understand about emotional advisors is so much of their life is about relationships. So this is where that relationship, this focus comes in, where you're really trying to help them understand how to operate in relationships in a way that's really, helpful for both sides of the equation. This is a research reference slide, healthy strategies for the emotionally sensitive. The reason I have this here is people who don't understand design, don't understand how their emotions work, they don't understand their impact on other people. They don't understand how their partner, their spouse, their coworker, when their wave's up, the other person may be riding it with them. And when they're down, same thing. What happens most frequently to emotionally defined people is other people who are more sensitive emotionally are taking this personally, especially when they're down. Did I do something wrong? What's wrong with them? When again, it's just emotions. They go up and they go down. So for an emotional defined person to understand this can be really powerful to understand this is how other people experience me. That's a key part of your coaching with an emotional advisor. Now, if you're the emotional advisor coach, you're geared to work with people in very specific ways. And again, you're more reflective, you're more coaching from a place of not giving too much answers, but you're allowing your wave to sort of move through and get clarity over time so you can share the tidbits, you can share your level of awareness. Another thing to understand about emotional people is half the population has it defined, half the population has it open. So that 50% of the population is setting the emotional climate, the emotional field anywhere you go. That's helpful information to know. Last one is the willpower. Very rare, actually. I think this is just a small subset of the population. If you have 100 people, maybe 1 or 2 will be willpower advisors. They have this willpower. It's directly connected to the identity function through this 2551. This is about testing yourself, pushing yourself, really pushing the boundaries, seeing how far, things can go to expand. 3 levels of coaching is they make decisions and accept invitations based on the concept of what's in this for me? Is this what I want? So in traditional terms, even in human design, we talk about the ego or the capital I. What do I want? In this case, it's really helpful and important for them to embrace that sense of identity, that I, because these are the people who drive change in relationships. They drive change in organizations. They drive change in the way that we sort of look at life. We need these people to, because, you know, at a certain point, if we don't have change, things stagnate. Willpower advisors are the people who bring change into the world. And it comes through them. So it's okay for them to say, hey, this isn't working. I sense, you know, we need some change. Let me help you with this. These people also need sounding boards. Essentially, they're exploring their thoughts. The 3 levels of coaching are helping them embrace this concept of what's in it for me. Is this what I want? That's, in certain societies, that can be deeply a conditioned response, like, no, don't operate from that place. That's an ego place. That's a shadow place. For these people, it's not. Again, we're coming back to this concept of sounding boards. This is a kind of a fun metaphor. Is who's on your board? Who are the people in my life who I can trust, who will listen and reflect and not give me advice? It can be up to you as the willpower advisor to let people know, this is how I'd love for you to listen to me. This is how I would love you to reflect for me. Okay, so I'm open to questions. And just really quick, if you are interested in and you haven't signed up for a foundation class before, you can do that. I'm starting next week on Thursday, sorry, at 1600 UTC. You can sign up here at this link or on the BG5 business website. If you want coaching or any help, any services, you can reach me at this email. Thank you, everyone. Okay, Coach, questions, sorry. Any questions for anything we talked about?
I'm not seeing any right now, but you guys can type them either into the Q&A or into the chat.
All right. Okay, folks, there's no questions. Thank you very much. So good to meet you. And if you want to reach out, feel free. Okay, everyone. Bye for now.